Tony Il Cascarino and Georgie Bingham. And what a night.
Yes.
What a fight. That was a heavyweight fight for the ages. Let me say, first of all, I think it's probably the greatest heavyweight title fight we've ever seen in this country in history. And, you have to start making comparisons with Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier won the fight of the century at Madison Square Garden, and also the Thriller in Manila that they had 4 years later, their third in their trilogy, because of the seesawing drama and what we learnt and what we saw in that fight, with both men, by the way, because Klitschko deserves massive credit for what he achieved last night as well.
I was going to ask you on Klitschko, Gareth, because in the early 2000s, around 2003-04, he'd got knocked out a couple of times, and he was a bit more of an open fighter. Then he just fought with his jab and held the belts for years and years and years. Last night, it was a bit of a throwback from Klitschko, with going a bit more of an aggressive style.
Definitely. He had to do that because Anthony Joshua won the battle of the jab in the first 4 rounds. And this is where he showed his inexperience, because he obviously downed Klitschko. He crumpled him like an ox being shot in the 5th round. But Klitschko, great heart and stoical champion that he is, he got to his feet, he gathered himself, he made the count. And you know what? Joshua was in trouble then by the end of the 5th, because his inexperience showed, because he almost danced a jig with his hands in the air, thinking he'd done the job.
Well, Gareth, do you know there's a still photo last night of Joshua with both hands raised aloft when he put Klitschko down, thinking he'd beaten him, and some photographer managed to capture that moment. And of course, we didn't see it because the camera was focused on Klitschko on the floor. But if you were in the ring or in the stadium, you would have seen it.
I did. I reported on that. He walked away, danced a little jig, he put his arms in the air, and he kind of started jumping up and down, thinking he'd won the fight. That's the kind of inexperience that Anthony has, that AJ has, that that was such a massive learning fight for him. And as Tony Bellew was saying to you, he answered a lot of questions last night. He answered questions about his chin, about his heart, about his bravery, and at the end, about his stamina. Because when he got his he went through 9 torrid minutes from the end of the 5th round through the 6th, the 7th, and Klitschko began to tire in the 8th. It was a round where they really tied up a lot, and by the 9th, when Anthony came out then, he started to dance on his toes again, and he had his head back. And where his body was, God knows, he couldn't remember those rounds, he told us. He could not remember what Rob had told him in the corner even. It was an extraordinary night, and, there has been so much hype around Anthony Joshua, and he really proved last night that he really could go on to be very special. Lennox Lewis was very proud of him. Evander Holyfield was talking of him in very high terms. Evander Holyfield had a barn burner himself, his first fight with Riddick Bowe, and that last night was comparable with it. And I say again, kudos to Klitschko. He got redemption last night.
Yeah, he did.
It was a brilliant performance for a 41-year-old champion.
Let's talk about what next for Joshua, because quite clearly there'll be an appetite for him to fight a slimmed down back to form Fury. But I mean, listen, the appetite for the rematch will be absolutely huge as well.
Yeah, it will depend. The dust will have to settle. Vladimir Klitschko will go back to his home in Hamburg, and he will think long and hard about this. He earned a lot of money last night. It broke British pay-per-view records as well, of course. So the two men will have earned an extraordinary sums of money, approaching perhaps £15 million each last night. How many more times does Klitschko want to have his bones rattled? I mean, he's been around such a long time. I suspect that he may call it a day after this. 2 losses in a row, a very, very tough fight last night. He was stoical, went away with his head held high. This respect level, guys, for this whole promotion between them has been off the chart.
Yes, thank goodness.
But I think, yes, the rematch could happen. I don't think it will. Tyson Fury, as Tony just mentioned, he's got a hearing with the UK anti-doping in May. He's got to get his licence back from the boxing board. We know he wants to fight. He was the first to congratulate to congratulate AJ on Twitter, but obviously wanted to call him out as well. The WBA mandatory right now, I believe, I think it's Luis Ortiz, and the IBF mandatory is Kubrat Pulev, or it's the other way round. I'm very tired. I can't remember which it is.
That's all right. We'll forgive you.
But you know, there are, as you say, there's Joseph Parker, the WBO champion, and there's Deontay Wilder, the WBC champion. So right there are, however many that is, 4 or 5 or 6 potential fights next.
Thank you so much for coming on, Gareth.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
Cheers, Gareth.
Lovely.
Bye-bye.
Go and get some sleep. Gareth A. Davies.